I'm Lauren Rioux, and I'm here with Peghead. Today I want to talk to you about my instrument, my fiddle and my bow. So let's start with my fiddle. I have a 5-string fiddle made by Jonathan Cooper, who lives in Portland, Maine. I live in Maine too. I live just right outside of Portland, and I've known John, oh boy, probably close to 25 years at least at this point. I first started playing a 5-string after I realized they were invented. I really didn't know about them, but I saw that Brittany and Daryl had them. And at that point, I was when I had first seen it, I was still playing a lot of classical music, and I actually play viola as well. I play violin and viola, and I had quite a few students playing viola, and my viola that I bought for $75 when I was in 7th grade from the local music teacher. So while it was great that I had a viola, it was actually so much lesser quality than my students had that I would always have to borrow my students' violas to demonstrate something because their violas would sound better than mine. So I saw a 5-string and I was like, oh my gosh, that would be so amazing because I wouldn't have to go back and forth between 2 instruments. And especially with my students, I was constantly readjusting my hands because the instruments were different sizes. And so I spoke with John, and he actually had made a 5-string viola, which I don't have with me today, but he had made a 5-string viola, which is a viola body, and he had the violin string. So he added the E string. So viola is from the lowest to the highest is C, G, D, A, and so that's what this is too. C, G, D, A, and then the violin has the E. So he had made a viola body instrument and added that 5th string up on the top. Sometimes 5-string violas have a lower F, but this had the higher E, and so I was pumped. I was psyched. I loved it, and that was my first Jonathan Cooper instrument. I played that as my primary instrument. I moved into 5-string territory. I started learning a whole bunch of Bach cello suites. I was playing all my fiddle tunes. I was extending my backup range into the C string. I was using that as my primary instrument for probably at least 3, maybe 4 years. And the viola body is just so much bigger. It's so much wider here in the instrument, and the shoulders are wider. And so it's kind of like, in a way, like, I don't mean this as a diss because I have a minivan myself as a mom, but it was kind of like a minivan of an instrument. It was just so big. It was very utilitarian, but it was also so big. And I realized that I needed something smaller, and all of my 5-string fiddle friends were playing fiddles and not violas. And so I asked John if he would make me a 5-string fiddle, so an instrument on a fiddle body as opposed to a viola body. So that is the long story to let you know that is how this instrument came about. I commissioned this for him, and he worked really hard on the form of this instrument, getting the distance. So if you might notice how broad it is here, the distance between the C bouts, he really stretched this to make room, as much room as possible for that C space and for the wider bridge to accommodate the 5th string. And I think he just did a really beautiful job of making the fingerboard feel as similar to a 4-string as you can. One of the biggest challenges I find, there are quite a few challenges moving from 4-string to 5-string, but one of them is how the fingerboard and the neck feel in your hand, because they usually kind of get like a little stubby or chubby in your hand because of the thickness and the width. And John did a really phenomenal job of keeping this width like a fiddle, and it's very, very comfortable to play on the neck. Another challenge when you're changing from a 4-string to a 5-string is that all of a sudden you have a middle string. So on a 4-string, you have 2 on one side and 2 on the other side, and there's no string in the middle of the bridge. But as you can see, the D string sits securely in the middle of the instrument. So your bow arm really has a lot of muscle memory to relearn for getting the angles of the edges of the strings. So that was one of the biggest challenges for me, was from my bow side. But he did such a great job on the fingerboard that it really wasn't that much of an issue moving from 4-string to 5-string. And also a benefit that he did for me is that he made sure that the string lengths on both the viola and the violin, the 5-string viola and the 5-string fiddle that I have, are the same. So he made the length from the nut to the bridge the same, so I could go back and forth between them without having to adjust my intonation. I do have to adjust my bow technique a little bit between the two of them. But the label says Jonathan Cooper, Facit Lano, 2008. So he made this for me in 2008. At that point, this was his 289th instrument. He's definitely in the high 3s or 4s at this point. And it even has my name in this label. It says, made from my dear friend Lauren Rioux, which is really special and kind. It's got the standard maple front, spruce top, maple back and sides for the ribs. It's a one-piece back. I'll take my shoulder rest off so you can see. I think it's got some nice tiger's eye winking happening. John is famous for having like a very soft varnish. So over the years, my shoulder rest has worn off some of the varnish, which he's fixed from time to time. I have a lot of little like memories on the fiddle of where people have either knocked me or something's happened. Some things you might also notice about my fiddle is that it has an absurdly long, large scroll for a fiddle body. It's actually a viola scroll. I think John was making this in a hurry. I needed this. I really wanted to make the album that I made of Scott's music. Scott Nygaard has an album called Scott Nygaard and Crow Molly. And I was in that band with him, and I really wanted to record on the fiddle instead of the viola. So I was kind of in a deadline for that. And he had a viola scroll already carved. So he put this viola scroll on my 5-string fiddle body. I have geared pegs, tuning pegs, which are really nice for climate change, like moving between different temperatures. When I was touring a lot, I was going someplace different all the time. And I also do a lot of cross tuning for old time tunes. So it's really convenient to have the geared tuning pegs. They just make it a little bit more stable. I'm a fan. I like them. I have them on both of my instruments. I took my shoulder rest off. This is a really old Mach 1. I think I've had this since 1999. I will be so sad one day if it breaks. So I take really good care of it. And I actually never applied, when they first started making these, they came with like an adhesive leather for a grip, because so many people are used to using like a squishy shoulder rest. And so the leather was for an adhesive, but I actually felt that the wood felt better to me. I really don't like the feeling of that grippiness against my skin, especially if I'm warm, which sometimes I am if I'm jamming out on fiddle tunes or performing or under bright lights. So this just feels better on my skin. It doesn't irritate it. Another reason why I really like this shoulder rest is because it's a relatively high shoulder rest. And the other thing that you might have noticed is how high my chin rest is. And I have a high setup, a high shoulder rest, and a high chin rest because I have an absurdly long neck. So the hope when we're putting our these accessories on our instrument is that we're filling the space between our chin and our chest when we turn, and you also have to think about the distance between your jaw and your shoulder. And so you want to fill that space up evenly from the top and the back. And when you turn your head, that way you can just all your brains and eyeballs and tongue and bones and hair and all that kind of stuff, the weight of your head is holding it on your shoulder as opposed to your hands. So the Mach 1 does that for me. And then Jonathan Cooper added, is that an inch? I don't know. He added this much ebony to my Guarneri chin rest to lift it up. So that's why there's this big space here. So I have quite a large plate. This is the standard Guarneri chin rest because I like that. Depending on what's comfortable for you, where you mount the chin rest is really important. But this works for me with the height. So if you look this way, what's nice about it is that my neck can stay straight. So those are kind of the accessories, but those are things that John helped me with. The other part of this is my bow. It's everybody thinks so much about the instrument, and that's huge, but the combination between the two is really what matters. I play, so this is a modern instrument because it's a modern maker still living. My bow is also modern. It's by Thomas Dignan. He is outside of Boston. I think actually, does it say Boston on my bow? I think it does. It says Thomas is abbreviated, so it's THOS is what it's stamped. Thomas Dignan on my bow. It's a viola bow. It's a really, really light viola bow. I needed something more than a violin bow in order to yank and pull on my C string. I knew that I needed it to not be too heavy because I didn't want to be overbearing on the E string. I needed to kind of have more weight to pull on the C, but not too heavy to be overbearing for my E string. So I love this bow. It's very special to me. I'm really grateful that I found a bow that works for both my 5 strings. And I feel like it's strong and flexible simultaneously. So that's what I need. I put a pencil grip on it. Some people ask me about this. I teach really long hours. I teach sometimes from like 9 in the morning until 7 at night. So I'm playing all day, and by the end of it, the bone in my index finger can just get really tired. And I saw Natalie McMaster have a bunch of padding on her bow, and I was like, man, that seems like a good idea. And I think around the same time Daryl started doing this, and I was playing with Daryl at the time, so we just got some pencil grips and took the bow apart. If you unscrew it completely, the frog will come off, and then you can slide the pencil grip on there just from like Staples or something like that. You usually do need to have like something that will help it slide just a little bit. I think I used a tiny bit of like chapstick or Vaseline to get it on there. So that's my bow by Thomas Dignan and my 5-string fiddle by Jonathan Cooper. So right now I'm using Diodario strings, and I have the Zyx label on. I have violin A, D, and G. I'm also using the silver version of the D string. So sometimes you can have aluminum or you can have silver. I like the silver. And I'm using a short scale C string. So they come in different lengths. And so I think it's like short, medium, and long, and I'm using the short scale C string, so I don't have like so much extra C to wind. And then for my E string, it's also Diodario, but it's not the Zyx. It's their Kaplan Kaplan Solutions, I believe, non-whistling E, and it does a good job of not squeaking, and so that's why I use it. So Diodario, Zyx, and medium gauge, and the Kaplan Solutions non-whistling E string.